Hi, I'm Scott Simpson.
And I'm Charla Stever.
And we're TIE Learning Specialists. That's Technology and Innovation in Education. We're officed in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Over the last few years, we've been doing quite a bit of work with Lucy Fredericks, who's the Director of Indian and Multicultural Education in North Dakota. And most recently, we were working on a grant with her to work with our team of champions in North Dakota and Bismarck that has been doing some work around North Dakota Native American Essential Understandings. And so today, we wanted to share out a little bit about the work that we've done with the Striving Readers Grant in North Dakota.
All of that's connected in with the North Dakota Native American Essential Understandings project, and a lot of lessons that have been developed over the last 5 or 6 years, and really fine-tuning some of that to really help our students in all areas, but especially, I hope we'll point out in literacy.
So just to frame a little bit about the work that we're doing in the application that was put together for the Striving Readers Grant with Lucy, we state the overall goal for Striving Readers, and it states that North Dakota will integrate and align resources and policies to support the literacy skills of disadvantaged children birth to grade 12 to graduate choice ready, with the knowledge, skills, and disposition to be successful in whatever they choose to do. And so we chose several goals. There were 4 goals, actually, that we felt this particular work could address. One goal was to prioritize serving disadvantaged children. And when we think about the subgroups of students in our state, one subgroup is, of course, our Native American students. And we know historically there has been an achievement gap there, and we want to make sure we're doing something to address that. Things that we have been doing in the past just weren't working. And so we want to make sure that we're prioritizing them, making sure that what's being offered in our public schools is addressing those needs specifically. Another goal was to implement high-quality comprehensive literacy instruction that is evidence-based. And I don't know, Scott, if you want to talk a little bit about that, but over the years, like you mentioned, we've been working on creating a set of resources that could be used for teaching the North Dakota Native American Essential Understandings in all grades and all content areas. And so this was really a part of that, is to look at making sure that those resources that have been created are doing what we need them to do for our teachers.
What I appreciate is that in that goal, the word comprehensive, because this is certainly about language arts and literacy standards, but it's also about the literacy that's occurring in all content areas at all grade levels, and really creating the environment for those literacy skills to grow and to create the right environment for learning to happen, especially learning around speaking and listening and reading and writing.
And at times I think the essential understandings have been sort of looked at as something for history and social studies, which is very true. It's just that there are so many ways they can be brought into other subject areas, including literacy, language arts. So another goal that was part of the proposal was that we would provide professional development to support teachers. And that was a huge part of this work. It's actually been a real gift to us as well, as we've been working with this team of teachers, many from Bismarck, some from Mandan and from Grand Forks. Fargo. And we've been working on bringing this group together, and this particular grant was able to support a gathering that was really rich, and you'll get to see a little bit of that here in just a few moments. And then finally, the last goal was to improve literacy outcomes, which we've already talked about briefly. Right. So that was what we had hoped to do with this Striving Readers Grant application and the funding that was provided through that grant program.
So I'll talk just a little bit more about this team of champions, which really came to a took place in this particular project. They were kind of already mobilized and working thanks to great leadership in Bismarck School District and beyond, Mandan as well. And so we had been working with them some already, but then they were really in a good place to begin this particular work because they all really had a really good introduction to the NDNAEU, and also had been, in many cases, implementing the lessons connected with those essential understandings in their classrooms already. And working on that project. So we took a lot of the lessons and things that had been developed over the last 5 or 6 years, which needed updating, and really engaged this group in that specific task of updating those lessons, but also then creating new lessons. We updated somewhere in the neighborhood of 160 some odd lessons that really needed to be updated, just things like making sure the links were all working, making sure they were still aligned to the standards that they were originally designed to be aligned to, and then have now engaged that same team in creating new lessons with a special eye on the areas that there weren't lessons, as many lessons in.
So this grant actually paid for then having this group of teachers come together for a full week. Now, it was supposed to be in person, but of course with the pandemic, we shifted and we ended up doing it in a virtual setting, which I think actually ended up being great.
Great, yeah.
The interaction was very rich. So this work week was designed then to take on those two tasks: update the current resources and create a new set of resources to add to it. And that, I think, was really well accomplished. This group of teachers, they were so amazing. I should say teachers and educators, because there were a variety of positions involved. But the work week itself just provided for opportunities for us to be together through Zoom, where we talked through the importance of the work. We had already done a course together earlier this summer with the Team of Champions work around the essential understandings. So that was all still very fresh in people's minds, but then took it this step deeper to dig into, so what has been created? What are those resources that are out there? And so every lesson that has been created over the past few years had a chance to be looked at again. And something, I don't think we expected this benefit from it, but one of the really great things that happened is because of all that deep work in those lessons, teachers, the educators who were involved, suddenly became aware of these lessons in a way that they hadn't been before. Only a few of them had been involved in writing those initially. And so that was really wonderful to see that.
I think they became aware of the lessons. I think they also became very aware of issues in their schools and in their settings, in their districts that maybe they weren't aware of before because of the rich conversations. We had 3 Zoom meetings. The first 2 really to help set the stage for the work they were going to be doing, and then to check on how that work was going, answer questions. The last Zoom meeting really was near the end. They were all getting close to wrapping things up, and that's when we kind of encouraged them to have some discussions about some of the learnings and some of maybe the aha moments, some of the important issues that kind of came up to the surface, and had a great discussion. And I will also add, importantly, I think a diverse discussion, because we had Indigenous elders, we had educators, everyone. We had non-Indigenous educators, non-Indigenous administrators. We had a really great group of diverse folks working on this team. And so everyone was bringing something a little bit different, and made a lot of progress. So we're really excited to show you. We've selected a few clips from that meeting. So the video quality won't be the greatest, but it's, we all know that. We've done a lot of Zooms recently. So, but I think you'll be able to hear and to see the excitement and the learning in everyone's voice. So we're going to take a look at about three moments that came out during this Zoom meeting, and then we'll maybe draw a couple of connections there, and then look at the rest after that. So, I think this first one we're going to listen to is Kathy Freilich.
Right, right.
It's been quite the experience. Those standards are kind of overwhelming. I can imagine teachers trying to go in and figure all that out. But one of the lessons I was working on, which it's taking me time, but anyway, it was on tribal language, native language. And as I was looking at the standards, it all kind of fit under foreign language. And I was wondering, as I was looking for what standards to use, why there isn't a separate standard for North Dakota tribal languages.
Because it's not a foreign language, it's the most indigenous language there is.
I know, and that bothered me a little bit, that there isn't a separate area. I just think that, while most tribes are in some form of revitalization, that it just adds a message to our education world that it is important and valued.
Yeah.
That it isn't a foreign language, that it impacts so many of the other areas.
And I believe that our educational system was not made for our indigenous peoples. It was weaponized against them. So
Yep.
there's a lot of systematic thought that needs to go into addressing those issues. So it goes way beyond just, it's a language, it's the way we need to think about our indigenous peoples. It's the total overhaul that we needed to do in our society and that hard work.
So
I have a comment. You brought up South Dakota, and I did teach there for 3 years. And one of the things that they did was they had 400 minutes a week that students were spending on culture. And I know we're a far cry from that, because I think about I spend time teaching in the classroom language and culture a week, but I don't have all of the students. But we do have the students on Monday mornings. We spend from 8:30 till about 9:15. The students are 7th through 12th grade are in the gymnasium, and we do smudging, prayer, and we have students come out and they will share the language or the culture. We'll have drumming and we'll have singing and dancing. So, it is getting better, but yet, I knew that those language were being addressed as foreign. And one of my comments has always been that I can remember growing up and going to school and having left a home where it was rich in language and culture, and coming to school where it was sterile and there wasn't any language and culture. And I feel like I'm beating my head against the wall again, having this conversation about our indigenous language. It is rooted here in North Dakota. Every one of these languages are vital, and they're in the water, they're in the trees, they're in the land, and we're still saying, that it's foreign, when actually, that does need to be addressed, so that our students and the mainstream can know that, these are still vital, they're still being spoken, and they're important with the values and everything that we are as Indigenous people, so that our students can really celebrate who they are and know their identity.
Yes. So some really great insights there, I think, from a couple of elders and a culture specialist who are all Indigenous themselves in North Dakota, about things that really, I think, impact literacy learning and learning in general when the system or the way we see language or the way we see culture, the way we make flexible space for culture, things that are connected with the local students and the local community in ways that really make that environment for literacy learning a place where that can happen.
And those were really just some highlights. The conversation, we were Zooming together for well over an hour, and those are just a few of the highlights that came out of that first part of our discussion.
I think one of the things that happened, that's an example of some of the insights of issues maybe that still remain, that are still blocking the learning, blocking the literacy learning in some of our schools. And then some of the other members of the team began to talk about how can we mobilize, how can we address some of these issues, what can we do next, what are some of our next steps. And so we're going to listen to a few of those members share some things now.
Actually, it makes me think of one thing I was looking into. I started to look at the professional development things that we have, and I'm thinking of our Team of Champions work and the conversation that we had earlier with Shelby too, of like becoming those advocates and becoming the people who can disrupt the system. And one thing that I applaud Sashay on is your ability to do this work, but you also, and but is not the right trend, like you push for this work and you also say it's going to be uncomfortable, you're learning, and that's okay, and you're going to make mistakes. And it's almost this combination of like, well, maybe the idea is like you're a warm demander of I want better, but I also know it's going to be hard and uncomfortable. I'm thinking of the circles of trust. Is that the right? The circle of trust touchstones. That's on the Teaching of Our Elders website. But if I'm right about this, we haven't gone through this group. And I think that would be core in helping me at least become a true champion. Not just knowing the lessons and not just knowing the 7 essential understandings deeply and believing in it, but how do I have these tough conversations? And it's hard to say tough conversations when you believe in it and you just want to see things different and move things forward. But we know that if we really want to disrupt the system, we have to have these tough conversations. But to do them well, we have to establish trust. We have to, like Sashay does, we have to create these spaces of vulnerability and learning and unlearning. So I'd be curious about that as we're talking about moving this work forward. I personally need to get skilled up in that work.
I think that's something that maybe would be helpful in that dismantling of racism in schools is just a set of questions that could be a starting point for the North Dakota school administrators or whatever to look at and examine, like what are the white structures, what are the institutionalized like racist structures of the way our schools are designed, the way our classrooms are designed, the way like physically, but also instructionally. You know, as a white girl who grew up in North Dakota, who had a pretty traditional public education, you know, I am not really aware personally of, you know, the way that this is how school was for me, and this is how it just always, it still is, you know. And so I think that a movement for this group, and I hope to see as a part of the anti-racist movement, is just like, how can schools work to self-examine how do we do things, and a lot of us are white, unfortunately, in our schools that are diverse. And so how can we challenge some of the thought? And I don't really know what that would look like, but I think that some of that needs to really start to happen in North Dakota schools, and to say, you know, are we really structuring this in a way that is white? Or are we, you know, or is this really computing with the brains of kids of all different cultures? And I don't really know where that would start, but that might be the next chapter in the development of, not curriculum, but the development of guidelines for schools to start to examine.
Well, I mean, that may be a way to look at the standards and look at sort of inclusively, that there are some systematic changes that this group could help to model.
You know, if you're going to work in Fargo schools, work in North Dakota, these are things that you need to do. You need to get the circle of trust training. You need to have exposure to all of these things. So one of the things Melody has done is reached out to her superintendent, administrators, and others, and has made this as a plan. You know, if we're going to really do anything, there is already a product. You know, the Indian AEU.
So what I found kind of exciting is that, it seems like everyone's mind is on some of these really important issues and awareness that's even bigger than just our schools and our state, but kind of part of the national conversation right now, becoming aware, non-Indigenous teachers becoming aware. What are the things that are really designed in a way that cause our Indigenous students or other students who don't quite fit that mold to not be able to do as well. And you know what's interesting is that's another kind of literacy. If literacy is being able to decode and make meaning out of written language, out of spoken language, another part of literacy is being able to make meaning out of that social engagement. If I look at a place and I see that this person's struggling with something, am I able to look around and say, well, of course, we've got this blockage that's in the way. And that's what I think what good teachers are wanting to do and excited about doing.
And that's really, you're talking really about the culturally responsive practices,
right, exactly,
that we have been working on, especially with this team of champions, but in other places, I know many school districts are taking that on. How do we make sure that the instruction that we're providing, the experiences our students are having in school, meet the needs of every student, of every learner, no matter their background, no matter their socioeconomic status, no matter their culture, their race, or whatever other part of who they are, part of their identity, that they aren't feeling on the outside of that. And with this particular group, this particular work that happened, I knew it would be great just because they're wonderful people involved. I didn't realize, unprompted, that these teachers would bring up such rich and deep concerns and issues for education. And I really feel like they have some of those answers of how to go about making this happen. And so I'm excited when I think about, they're talking about next steps. I'm excited for those next steps.
Right. What
is it that we do now, knowing some of the things that we became aware of through this process?
A couple of other things we'd like to share with you. There was, while this all was going on face-to-face on the Zoom, there was also a lot going on in the chat. So I'd like to share a couple of these things. We'll put those up on the screen and read through those for you. Just some really great interactions that we wanted to capture and then share with you. So JT Shining One Side, whom you heard from, said, for instance, I thought everyone on my res grew up knowing their Anishinaabe identity. Unfortunately, that was not the case. How do we create lessons to get teacher, administrator, student involvement to want to talk about these ideas and grow together? Important work.
And another one from Vonda Dahl, who was on this call as well. To add to that thought, JT, as the district coaching coordinator, I am thinking of ways to make turning to these lessons a natural part of every teacher's lesson planning. It would be tragic to have these lessons relegated to a thematic unit or week of culture.
And then JT responded, I agree. We have a month dedicated to Indigenous in November. We can do better. The work is there. We just need to put the work out there and touch base with the teachers and parents each week.
And love this from Alex Dakota. You guys are awesome. I love listening to you all tackle this most important work that most choose to avoid. We'll pull them in.
And JT responded, right, Alex, we need to use the North Dakota standards in the work so teachers know it's important and valid in the classroom. Do you have the link to show these standards?
And then lastly from JT, I would be interested as that is an area to help teach and learn from each other in North Dakota. I love the Wolakota Project work also. Makes my spirit feel valued.
Well, and having your spirit feel valued is a key thing for our students and for our teachers as well. Literacy skills are developed as I connect personally with whatever it is I'm reading, whatever it is I'm listening to. And when I'm in an environment where the things around me give me a sense that my identity is not really valued, and that happens to so many of our students who are people of color, because of the bias that's built in. They oftentimes don't see themselves in the stories we're reading. They don't see themselves in the structures in the school. They don't see themselves in the processes that we go through. Knowing that I have a place here, knowing that my identity is valued, enables me then to connect not just with things that are coming from my own culture, but that enables me to connect with things that are coming from other cultures. And so that's such an important piece of this.
So we are really thankful to be invited into this work. We're very thankful for Lucy Frederick's leadership and vision around this work, and that she sees the importance and value of making sure that teachers have opportunities like what we just had with this group. And so we want to express our gratitude for the funding that was provided for this, and the time, and of course all of the talent and energy and everything from the teachers who have been a part of it. And we really look forward to what this might lead to next.
Right. So thank you so much. In a nutshell, the work has created a great, strengthened a great group of the champions and their work, and they're spearheading that, taking leadership, and it's produced, I think, by the time we're done, well over 200 really up-to-date lesson plans that are going to be out there for all our teachers to use, where they can bring together their standards and the Indian AEU in culturally responsive ways. So,
in so many ways, North Dakota is leading the way in this. So thank you for allowing us to be involved, and we look forward to what we can do together in the future.
Be well.
Thanks.